Hello, my name is Adia Pandey and this is my energy audit. So, a little bit about the background of my residence. I live in a house with my twin and my parents. Our house is 3 stories and around 3,600 square feet, so our average monthly energy usage comes out to be about 2,000 kilowatt hours. On the bottom right is a graph of the US residential sector electricity consumption, depending on different major end uses. I did want to highlight lighting and other uses, as those two sectors are most relevant to the devices I used for today's project. So, in terms of devices that I used a lamp and a light for constant power devices. The label on my light does read 9 watts in the picture. I also had a standing fan, an electric bed, which is basically a bed with reading lights on it, a Google Assistant, and air freshener. For my variable devices, I had a laptop, a blender, and printer. The blender and printer are cycle devices. In the pictures, I also included a phantom reading for my electric bed, as well as the normal reading, which was 4 watts when it was off and 19 watts when it was on. So here is a daily log of how many hours each of these devices were used every day. My family members did contribute to certain devices on this log as well, and anywhere where it reads 0 just means that device wasn't used at all that day. And on the very right, I have average hours per day. So, in terms of the accuracy of my time logging, the standing fan, the blender, and the printer were 3 devices that my entire family used throughout the week. For the fan and the blender, I had my family members use a stopwatch and record how long they used the devices, and I also had them log how many times they used the blender. For the printer, only my dad uses that, and it's located in his office, so I had him log how many prints he made and for how long he used the printer in that same shared notes document. These are my calculations. For the constant power device, I calculated watts on, watts off, and then how many hours in a day that device was used on and off. Using those base numbers, I was able to calculate watt hours per day and eventually get to kilowatt hours per day. For variable devices, I calculated kilowatt hours over a certain period of time, which led me to some more average calculations and kilowatt hours per day. And then for my cycle measurements, I took into account how many times the blender and printer were used throughout the week to get my average cycles per day over the course of 7 days, and then also got kilowatt hours per day. On the bottom right, I have my total energy use in kilowatt hours per day and kilowatt hours per month. So the measurement method did differ depending on the kind of device I was using. For the fan, which is a constant device, I just plugged in the meter and read a consistent reading after 30 seconds. The fan did not have phantom power. For my laptop, which is a variable power device, I plugged in my computer cord and let it be for 24 hours, and I got 0.033 kilowatt hours at the end, which I divided by 24 and multiplied by 1,000 to get kilowatts. For my light, which was a constant power device, I plugged my lamp into my meter, and the light bulb gave me 9 watts when it was turned on, and 0 watts when it was turned off. Here are some handwritten calculations for the different devices I used. For the fan, which was a constant power device, I used watts on, watts off, and the amount of time it was on to calculate the watt hours per day. And then I divided that by 1,000 and I got my kilowatt hours per day. For my variable power device, which is my laptop, I calculated 0.033 kilowatt hours over 20 hours. And using those measurements, multiplying by 1,000, I got watts on average, which I multiplied by 24 and got watt hours per day, and then I divided that number by 1,000, got my kilowatt hours per day. For the lamp, it was also a constant power device, so pretty much the same procedure as my constant power device. So for comparisons, in my energy use for lighting, I took my average lighting use, which was 0.04 kilowatt hours per day, and divided it by my total, which gave me 6.1%. For my other, I got 93.8%. Same calculations, basically the rest of my devices. This number is a little bit on the higher end than what it might actually be, just because I wasn't able to measure anything heating or cooling related because I didn't have access to those outlets. So the real number is probably closer to about 50 to 60%. The average US energy use is definitely significantly lower, with 4.4% for lighting and 39.4% for other. And some factors for why that may be would just be room for more sustainable choices on my part and my family's part, and a more efficient usage of devices. So there are 4 key ways I came up with to save energy for my family and I. One was to unplug devices, especially those that have phantom power. In my project specifically, I noticed that devices with phantom power were off almost 1.5 times more than they were on, so it would definitely save a decent amount of energy. I also wrote limited usage, so devices like my laptop charger or air freshener didn't have to be used 24/7 or all the time. I also had research alternatives, so look into fans or lights that operate maybe on solar energy. In the pie chart shown in the beginning, it did note that 27.3% of residential energy use is heating, and there are definitely cleaner alternatives to heating your house. So, changing even 27% of your residential energy use can make a big difference. And there's also using items with less watts. So, things like the fan or the lights and lamps can have less watts as well. And that's all. Thank you so much.